Can love return after years of silence? The message came when Emily least expected it. A single text on a rainy Thursday night. Short, almost careless, but heavy enough to make her heart forget how to beat. "Hey, I'm back in town. Coffee?" It was from Ethan, the man who had once promised her the world, then disappeared without a word. For a long moment, Emily just stared at her phone screen. Her reflection glimmered faintly on the glass. Tired eyes, soft brown hair loosely tied, the faint trace of a smile that wasn't sure if it belonged there. Outside, rain whispered against her car window, each drop sounding like a memory she had tried to forget. She read the message again. Coffee. One word that could mean 100 different things. Maybe he wanted closure, maybe forgiveness, or maybe he was just lonely. 4 years. That's how long it had been since she last saw him. 4 years since he'd walked out of her life one quiet morning without explanation. No calls, no letters, not even a goodbye. Just a vanishing act that left her rewriting every moment they'd shared, wondering if any of it had ever been real. But now he was back. And she didn't know if her heart was ready. Can one text bring back everything you buried? Emily sat still, phone in hand, debating whether to reply. She thought of the life she'd built since then. Her small apartment overlooking the city, her quiet job at the local design firm, her mornings filled with coffee and calm instead of chaos and heartbreak. She'd learned how to breathe again, how to smile without pretending, yet tonight, all it took was one name, Ethan, to turn her calm into a storm. She typed, "Sure, tomorrow. Same cafe?" and hit send before she could stop herself. Immediately, regret filled her chest like cold water. What was she doing? She hadn't stepped into that cafe since the day they met. It was a small, brick-walled place downtown, the kind where old records played and the smell of roasted beans clung to your clothes. She'd once called it their place. Now it was a memory waiting to hurt again. Why do old places feel louder when you return alone? That night, sleep never came easy. Emily tossed between thoughts. What she'd say, what he'd look like, what it would mean if he smiled the same way he used to. Would she still feel that spark? Or would she see a stranger pretending to be someone she once loved? By morning, the city was gray and half awake. She dressed carefully, without meaning to. A soft blue sweater, jeans, and the same necklace Ethan had once given her on their first Christmas together. She told herself it didn't mean anything, that it was just coffee, but deep down she knew it meant everything. What do you do when your heart remembers faster than your mind? The cafe looked the same. Maybe cleaner, maybe brighter, but still holding the same faint smell of cinnamon and rain. Emily stood at the door for a moment, letting her heart catch up. She took the same corner seat they used to share, ordered his usual drink out of habit, and stared at the door. Every sound of it opening made her chest tighten. And then, there he was. Ethan. He looked almost the same, but different in quiet ways. His hair was shorter, his shoulders broader, and his smile a little hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he was still allowed to wear it. "Hey," he said, his voice a mix of warmth and apology. "Hey," she answered, pretending her pulse wasn't racing. For a few moments, they just looked at each other. Two people caught between memory and reality. Can you talk about nothing when everything still hurts? They talked about the weather, work, random little things that didn't matter. Emily laughed at things that weren't funny. Ethan nodded like he was afraid of saying too much. But beneath their words lived 1,000 unsaid questions. He told her he'd been living out west, working construction, taking care of family. His life sounded simple, quiet, maybe lonely. She told him she'd stayed here, kept busy, learned to cook, learned to forget. Every word felt like walking on glass. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. "Why did you leave?" she asked softly. Ethan's smile faded. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "My dad got sick. I didn't know how to explain. I thought leaving quietly would hurt less." Her heart dropped. "You thought silence would hurt less?" He looked at her then, eyes filled with the same regret she'd carried for years. "I was wrong." The cafe fell silent. Only the faint hum of old jazz filled the space between them. What if forgiveness feels harder than hate? Emily wanted to be angry. She wanted to tell him how his silence had ruined her sleep, how she'd waited by the phone for weeks, how she'd replayed every moment wondering what she'd done wrong. But looking at him now, tired eyes, trembling hands, she saw something she hadn't expected. Guilt. Real heavy guilt. He wasn't the man who'd left. He was the man who'd lived with leaving. "I missed you," he whispered, voice almost breaking. Every day, she looked down at her untouched coffee. "Then why does it still feel like goodbye?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was written all over his face, outside. The rain had turned to snow, soft flakes drifting down, blurring the world into quiet white. Emily watched them fall through the window and thought about how easily seasons change, how something cold could still look beautiful if you just stopped fighting. Maybe love was the same way. Can love ever begin where it once ended? They sat in silence for a while. Words had done enough damage. Ethan smiled faintly. "I just wanted to see you again, to say I'm sorry. You deserved more than what I gave." She nodded, tears threatening but refusing to fall. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Ethan, but I'm glad you said it." He reached for her hand across the table. For a second, she didn't pull away. His touch felt familiar. Too familiar. Then her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name, Ryan, her fiancé. Ethan's hand froze midair. Emily's heart stopped. The sound of her phone seemed louder than the music, louder than her breath. She didn't answer. Not yet. For a single suspended moment, she was caught between past and present, memory and promise. Her eyes met Ethan's. He looked at her the same way he used to, like she was everything. But now, someone else was waiting on the other side of that call. And suddenly, she wasn't sure which life was truly hers anymore. The cafe door opened as a cold gust of wind swept in. Ethan turned toward it. Emily's phone still buzzed on the table, and for the first time she realized tomorrow might break more hearts than it could ever heal. Can two people talk like strangers after sharing everything? The cafe had never felt this quiet. Emily's phone was still vibrating on the table, the name Ryan glowing like a question she didn't want to answer. Across from her, Ethan looked frozen, half reaching for her hand, half ready to pull away. She pressed the screen to silence it, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry, he worries when I don't pick up." Ethan nodded slowly, his throat tight. "So, you're engaged?" There was no accusation in his tone, only disbelief. Like he had expected time to stop after he left, that she'd still be waiting where he'd abandoned her. Emily took a sip of her cold coffee. "Yeah, his name's Ryan. We've been together 2 years. Ethan's jaw tightened. 2 years, he repeated softly. "That's good." The air between them grew heavier. Outside, snowflakes melted against the window, each drop tracing slow patterns of regret. What if the right person comes back at the wrong time? Ethan stared at his cup, trying to find courage at the bottom. "I thought I'd see you again someday," he said quietly. "But I didn't think it would feel like this." Emily looked at him carefully. "Like what?" "Like I missed my chance," he whispered. Her heart gave a small, painful twist. She wanted to tell him that maybe he had, that love wasn't something you could leave and expect to find waiting in the same place. But when she looked into his eyes, the same gentle brown she used to fall into, all she saw was honesty. The kind that hurts more than lies. "I didn't expect to see you either," she admitted, "but when your message came, I couldn't ignore it." Why not? Because some ghosts deserve one last conversation. Ethan let out a faint laugh. Not happy, not bitter, just tired. "So that's what I am now? A ghost?" "Maybe," Emily said softly. "But at least you came back." Can the past ever sit quietly beside the present? They sat there in that little cafe, surrounded by other people's laughter and clinking cups, but it felt like the world had shrunk to their table. Ethan leaned back. "I saw your engagement post last year," he said. "You looked happy," Emily nodded. "I am. Ryan's kind. Steady. He doesn't disappear when things get hard." Her words stung, but she didn't mean them to. Ethan looked down, his voice barely audible. I deserved that. Silence again, thick and suffocating. Then he asked, do you love him? The question hit her like a wave. She should have said yes immediately, clear and strong. But the word caught in her throat. I do, she said finally, but even she could hear the hesitation. Ethan looked up, his eyes searching hers. You don't sound sure. I'm sure, she said quickly, then looked away. I just didn't expect to feel this way again. What way? Like I'm standing in two different lives and both feel half real. Why do old memories sound louder than new promises? Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table. I'm not asking for anything, Emily. I just wanted to see you, to know you're okay. I am okay, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. But seeing you, it's confusing. He smiled faintly. It's confusing for me, too. There was a time when they'd sit here for hours, sharing plans, laughter, secrets. Now, every word had to tiptoe around the truth. Ethan's fingers brushed the table's edge. Do you ever think about us? Emily looked at him sharply. Ethan, just answer me, he said softly. She sighed. Sometimes, when I hear a song or smell coffee or when it rains like that night. His eyes softened. Me too. Every time I smell rain, I think of you. The honesty in his voice disarmed her. It wasn't romantic. It was raw, real, and deeply human. And that was what made it dangerous. What happens when closure feels like a door reopening? Ethan shifted slightly, his expression more serious now. I know I hurt you. I can't fix that. But I need you to know. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. Her breath caught. Then why? My dad was sick. I thought I could handle it alone, and I didn't want to drag you into it. You had your dreams, your career starting. I didn't want to be the reason you gave that up. Emily shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You didn't give me a choice, Ethan. You just left. I know, he said, voice breaking, and I've regretted it every single day since. She wanted to scream, to tell him that regret came too late, that love doesn't wait forever. But she couldn't, because in his eyes, she saw the same ache she'd carried for years, the ache of what could have been. Can you forgive someone when your heart still remembers the pain? Emily took a deep breath. Ethan, forgiveness isn't simple. You can't just walk back and expect everything to fall into place. I'm not asking it to, he said. I just wanted to see you smile again. She laughed softly through her tears. You always knew how to ruin my makeup, he smiled back. You never needed it anyway. For a moment, it almost felt like old times. The kind of moment where you forget the years, the distance, the hurt. But then reality crept back in. Ryan's call, the ring on her finger, the life she'd built without Ethan in it. And suddenly, she felt guilty for even remembering what love used to feel like. What if the heart wants to forgive but the future won't allow it? Ethan leaned closer. If you're happy, that's enough for me. I just needed to know you were okay. I'll go after this. Emily blinked. Go where? Back home. I came here for work, but I think I needed closure more than anything else. She nodded slowly, her throat tightening. Closure isn't always clean, Ethan. Sometimes it just hurts quieter. He smiled faintly. Then I'll take the quiet kind. For a few seconds they sat there. Two people who once knew everything about each other. Now strangers holding too many unsaid things. When he stood up to leave, she felt panic rise. Ethan, wait. He paused, turning back, his expression unreadable. Emily hesitated, her voice trembling. Would you meet me again tomorrow? Just for a walk. I don't know why, I just need to. He nodded slowly. Tomorrow then. Can one more meeting change everything? As he walked out, snowflakes followed him into the streetlight. Emily watched through the glass, her reflection overlapping his fading figure. She didn't know if this was a mistake or something her heart needed to finally breathe. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Ryan. Dinner tonight? I miss you. Emily stared at it for a long moment before locking the screen. Her coffee had gone cold, but her pulse hadn't. Outside, Ethan was gone. But the air still carried his name. Emily looked out at the falling snow and whispered to herself, tomorrow. What she didn't know, Ethan had turned the corner and stopped under a streetlight, staring at his phone, where her old photo still lived in his favorites. What if seeing him again makes you question everything you built? The next morning arrived too soon. Emily barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face across that cafe table. The same warmth, the same quiet sadness. She kept hearing his voice saying, "I never stopped thinking about you." Now she was standing by the old bridge where they'd promised each other forever. Hands tucked into her coat pockets, heart beating faster than it should. Snow covered the railings like untouched memories. And then he appeared. Ethan. Wearing a dark coat, hands in his pockets, eyes soft but searching. For a second it felt like no time had passed at all. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she replied, her breath visible in the cold air. They stood in silence for a while, pretending they didn't feel the same storm building again. Can closure look too much like love? Ethan smiled faintly. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," Emily admitted. "But then I thought maybe I'd regret not hearing you out." "I just wanted to walk," he said. No big talk, no pressure. They started down the path along the frozen river. Their footsteps crunched in rhythm, the same rhythm they used to share when they walked home from that cafe years ago. "So," Ethan said after a moment, "Ryan must be a good man." "He is," Emily replied. "He's calm, kind, and predictable." "I like that," Ethan smiled softly. "Predictable doesn't sound like love." She stopped walking. "It sounds like peace." The words hung there, fragile, honest. Ethan looked at her, then at the snow. "Peace can be lonely too," Emily sighed. "And love can be chaos. I've had enough chaos, Ethan." But her voice wasn't steady. It shook, the way truth often does. "What if you've healed everywhere except where it matters?" They found a bench near the river and sat. The world was quiet except for the sound of the water moving beneath the ice. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've thought about that day 1,000,000 times, he said. "The day I left. I wish I'd said goodbye. I wish I'd trusted you enough to stay." Emily looked at him, her eyes tired but gentle. "You broke something in me, Ethan. I don't think you even realized it." "I know," he said quietly. "But I came back because I couldn't live knowing I left you with questions." She nodded slowly. "And I came today because I still had one." He turned to her. "What's that? Did you ever really love me?" Ethan looked stunned. "Emily, of course I did. Then why was it so easy to walk away?" "It wasn't easy," he said, his voice trembling. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" she repeated. "From what, love?" "From watching me fall apart." She looked away, blinking fast. "You should have let me choose, Ethan." "How do you let go of someone who never really left?" For a while neither spoke. The snow thickened, wrapping the world in white silence. Ethan finally said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I stayed?" "All the time," she whispered. "And? I don't know. Maybe we would have made it. Maybe we would have ruined each other." He laughed softly, but it wasn't joyful. "You always were honest to a fault," she smiled faintly. "And you always said what I wanted to hear. That's how we worked." Ethan nodded, his expression softening. "You know, I still have that photo, the one from the lake trip. You kept that?" "I couldn't delete it. Every time I tried, it felt like erasing a part of myself." Emily's eyes glistened. "Ethan, you can't live in the past forever." "Maybe," he said. "But some memories feel more alive than the present." She looked down at her gloved hands. "That's the problem. The past feels perfect, because we stopped living it before it got messy." "Can you love someone and still walk away?" They continued walking until they reached the edge of town. The quiet street was almost empty, lined with bare trees and warm lights from distant windows. Ethan stopped and turned to face her. "Emily, I don't expect anything. I know you have a life now. I just need you to know that I never stopped loving you." Her breath caught. "You shouldn't say that. It's the truth. The truth hurts," she said, voice shaking. "You can't just say you love me after disappearing for 4 years." "I know," he said softly. "But I can't pretend I don't." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "Do you know how many nights I stayed awake trying to forget you?" He nodded. "Probably as many as I stayed awake trying to remember you." The honesty in his words broke something in her. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I don't hate you, Ethan," she whispered, "but I don't know if I can forgive you either." He stepped closer. "Then don't forgive me, just remember me kindly." Her heart ached at the softness in his voice. It was too gentle, too familiar. "Don't make this harder than it already is," she said quietly. "I'm not," he replied. "I'm just being honest before I disappear again. When goodbye feels like destiny, do you fight it or let it go?" They stood there inches apart, breathing the same cold air. Snowflakes landed on her hair, melted on his coat. He looked at her the way he used to, not with regret, but with gratitude. "You changed me," he said. "You made me want to be better, and maybe that's all love is. Someone who makes you better, even if they can't stay." Emily felt her throat close. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." Ethan smiled faintly. "It was an amazing pleasure, though. Loving you." Those words hit harder than any apology could. She took a shaky breath. "Ethan." He turned to leave, snow crunching beneath his boots. Her voice broke through the air, trembling and unsure. "Ethan, wait." He stopped, turned halfway, his expression unreadable. Can one word change the end of a story? Emily took a step toward him. Her mind screamed to stay silent, but her heart refused. "I don't know why I said that," she said quickly. "I just can't let you walk away again without saying something." He waited, quiet, patient. She looked at him, her eyes full of 1,000 memories. "I loved you too. Maybe I still do, but love doesn't always mean we get to try again." Ethan nodded slowly, sadness and understanding mixing in his gaze. "I know, but hearing you say that, it's enough." They stood there, two people bound by what could have been, unable to change what was. Then her phone buzzed again, Ryan calling. She froze. Ethan's eyes flicked to the screen, then back to her. "Answer it," he said gently. "He's your present." Emily looked down, tears blurring her vision. "And what are you?" Ethan smiled sadly. "Your past, the part that taught you how to love." He turned, walking into the white mist, until his figure disappeared completely. The night was quiet, wrapped in the soft hum of falling snow. Emily stood on the bridge long after Ethan disappeared into the mist. Her phone still buzzed in her pocket, but she couldn't bring herself to answer it. The world felt paused, like even time didn't know which direction to go. She finally took a slow breath and whispered to the cold air, "Why does letting go feel heavier than holding on?" Snowflakes clung to her hair as she turned toward home. Every step echoed like an unfinished sentence. Every corner felt like it remembered something she wanted to forget. But beneath the ache there was something new. Not happiness, not sadness, just calm. For the first time, she realized that sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's the silence that follows it. What if the person you let go still lives inside you? When Emily walked into her apartment, the lights were soft, the air warm. Ryan was sitting on the couch, half asleep, the TV murmuring quietly in the background. He looked up the moment she entered. "Hey," he said gently, standing up. "I was worried." Emily tried to smile. "I know. I'm sorry." He studied her face, noticing the faint redness around her eyes. "You were crying. Just tired," she said quickly. Ryan didn't push. He walked over, wrapped his arms around her, and held her for a long moment. The warmth should have felt safe. But all Emily could think about was how strange it was. How you could love two people in entirely different ways. Ryan kissed her forehead. "I made dinner. Sit down, okay?" She nodded, trying to steady herself. As they ate, he talked about work, plans, and Christmas lights. She nodded and smiled in all the right places, but her mind drifted back to the bridge, to Ethan's eyes, to the quiet way he said, "It was an amazing pleasure, loving you, Can peace exist when your heart still whispers someone else's name? Later that night, when Ryan fell asleep, Emily sat by the window, watching snow cover the streets below. The world looked new, untouched, as if nothing painful had ever happened in it. She opened her phone and scrolled through old photos, not of Ethan, but of herself. Smiling, laughing, growing, somewhere between those pictures, she realized something important. She wasn't that same girl anymore. The one who had waited for texts that never came, the one who believed love had to hurt to be real. Ethan had left, yes, but his absence had built her strength. Ryan had entered, quietly and patiently, and taught her what stability felt like, and yet, she couldn't deny it. A part of her would always belong to the boy who once made the world feel like fire. But maybe that was okay. Not every love story was meant to last. Some existed just to teach you how to feel deeply, and then let go. Do memories fade, or do they just stop hurting as much? Days passed. The snow melted slowly, the streets returned to color. Life slipped back into its ordinary rhythm. Work, calls, weekends with friends. But sometimes when Emily passed the cafe, she'd pause. She'd look at the same corner table and smile quietly to herself. One afternoon, she finally went inside. She ordered coffee, sat by the window, and watched people come and go. No Ethan, no ghosts, just life moving forward. The barista brought her drink with a small smile. "You used to come here a lot," he said. "With someone, right?" Emily nodded, surprised he remembered. "Yeah, a long time ago." He smiled kindly. "Glad to see you back." She thanked him, took a sip of her coffee, and realized something simple but powerful. She wasn't sad anymore. The past had stopped aching. It was still there, but it no longer owned her. Can you forgive someone who never asked for forever? That evening, she went for a walk alone. The streets were glowing with warm yellow lights, couples holding hands, laughter echoing in the distance. She slipped her hands into her coat pockets and found something, the necklace Ethan had once given her. She had worn it out of habit for years, but now, as she looked at it, she smiled softly and unclasped it. With one small motion, she placed it on a park bench, brushed her fingers over it once and whispered, "Thank you." Then she turned and walked away. There was no sadness, no tears, only peace. Because now it didn't feel like losing someone. It felt like finally finding herself again. What if love was never meant to end, only to change form? That night, Emily sat with Ryan on the balcony, 2 mugs of hot chocolate warming their hands. The city stretched before them, lights shimmering like tiny stars. Ryan looked at her. "You seem lighter lately," he said. She smiled. "Maybe I finally let go of something that wasn't mine anymore." He nodded, not asking what. Maybe he didn't need to know. Maybe love was also about giving space to the parts of someone's story you weren't in. Emily rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a quiet sense of peace. Not perfect happiness, but something real. Something that stayed. The snow outside had stopped falling, but her heart felt steady now, calm in a way it hadn't in years. Do we ever stop missing the people who changed us? Weeks later, as winter began to fade, Emily received an unexpected letter. No return address, just her name written in familiar handwriting. Her heart skipped. She opened it carefully. "Emily, I didn't want to text or call. This felt better. I'm leaving again, this time for good. I've got a job overseas. Maybe that's what I needed all along. Distance to finally forgive myself. Thank you for meeting me, for hearing me, for reminding me that love can be kind, even when it ends. I hope he makes you laugh every day. You deserve that. Ethan." Emily folded the letter slowly, her eyes soft but dry. There was no heartbreak this time, only warmth. She placed the letter in her drawer, next to old photos, then looked out her window. The sky was gold with morning light. When the past finally rests, what remains? Spring came quietly. The cafe changed its playlist from winter jazz to soft indie songs. People walked faster, smiled more. Emily started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. She filled her small studio with colors that felt like peace. Soft blues, gentle whites, quiet golds. One afternoon, Ryan stopped by, looked at her work, and smiled. "You look happy." She turned, paintbrush in hand. "I am," she said simply, "for the first time in a long time." He hugged her, and she leaned into it, fully, honestly. No ghosts, no what-ifs, just now. As evening fell, Emily stepped out onto the balcony once more. The wind was warmer now, carrying the smell of new beginnings. She looked up at the sky, wide, endless, forgiving. She whispered softly, as if the wind could carry it to wherever Ethan was. It really was an amazing pleasure. And this time, she smiled, far away, under a sunset sky in another city. Ethan paused mid-step, as if he'd heard her voice in the breeze, then smiled too, before walking on.